Welcome to the Saynetwork podcast. I'm Megan, and I'm here with Jim Sparks.
Hello.
And I'm also here. You may notice we've got a little bit of musical chairs going on here. We have
such a twist.
I know, right? We have Jordan.
Hello.
Our new producer. If you did not check out or you missed our season 5 opener, we said goodbye to Abraham Guevara.
Can't believe he died.
I know. He did not die, but
that's right. Yeah.
And we said hello to Jordan, who is our new producer. And so Jordan's actually going to be hosting this episode. And our guest for today is Dave. You guys are all very familiar with Dave. And we are going to be talking about impending doom syndrome. So Jordan, the episode is yours.
All right. I think trying to host this episode is a better way of saying it.
You let us be the judge of that, Jordan.
So like Megan said, on today's episode, we're talking about impending doom syndrome and its effect it's having on teens and young adults in today's climate. So I guess I'll start with clarifying what impending doom syndrome is. It is a sensation or impression that something tragic is about to occur. So it says it's not unusual to feel a sense of impending doom when you're in a life-threatening situation, such as a natural disaster or accident. So with the pandemic, constant political tension around the country, the world, climate change, economic instability, it's hard to feel like the world isn't going to end any day now. So this has been true for me, especially since the pandemic first hit. I was a little less than a year fresh of graduating college. So it felt like I was like just getting out into the world, and then everything shuts down and you're like, what am I supposed to do now? So, my first question is, have any of you felt this sense of impending doom since the pandemic hit?
Since the pandemic hit, I was going to say, like, when you started giving the description of impending doom and the sensation that everything's going to fall apart, that's like what it felt like when I was dating. I was like, this is all too good to be true. This is going to die.
It's all going to fall apart.
I literally felt like everything's going to implode at any given second. So that's what first came to my mind. I'm sure my wife, whom I'm talking about, probably had rights.
Yeah.
But there was a moment actually in the pandemic, I was like, I don't feel like the world's going to end, but we'll never be the same. And having that kind of realization of never being the same. And like I was thinking, different generations have different things in their lives that forever change their lives, the depression, wars, and different things. And I was thinking like how much like population that we're all going through, like the world is going through this together. Like there's different things that happen in your lives, like in your country or stuff like that. But this is like the world, and having that realization, and it was like heavy for me. I was like, this is a really big deal. I never felt like the world was going to end. I'm always like, of the philosophy, we're just going to get through this. It may take a while. Like that's how I get through shots. Yeah. I was like, people survive this. It's going to be fine, or even when I get sick, I'm like, people survive it. It'll be fine. And it's how I got through a roller coaster. People survive it. It's going to be fine. But, that weight of it, like this is something that we'll talk about for the rest of our lives. And it had a dramatic impact on our lives, and some heavier than others, obviously. But every single person has been affected by it. That's kind of crazy to me that we've had that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my life changed a lot, like in a really seemingly short amount of time. So I don't know if I would say I felt like the world was ending, but I definitely felt a lot more anxiety and just kind of like overwhelming feeling because a lot of parts of my life were impacted. So I had to kind of figure everything out. But I do want to just say, Dave tried to warn us.
He did.
From the beginning.
We have to give full credit. Yes. I'm glad you brought that up.
He's the most prepared.
Yes, it was back in October, I think.
Oh, it wasn't that early. It was probably December, I think.
No, it was at least Thanksgiving because I remember talking about it.
COVID wasn't even in the news then, was it?
Yes.
I'm
giving you credit.
Okay, yeah, because you were like, you guys, there's this city in China called Wuhan. It's like the size of LA, and it's on complete lockdown.
I do remember what I said was they did a whole lockdown of their city. Can you imagine if they tried that here? It wouldn't work.
I know. And we were like, you're an idiot. Dave was on it.
Dave tried to warn us.
I did stock up on supplies. I might have particularly supported the local Costco in the area for quite some time. I had some supplies, but
Dave also has that pandemic RSS feed that he has. So anytime someone says that, he's on the pulse. But
well, the funny part about it to me is, I might have seen some things early. Going back to our topic then of impending doom, like, yeah, I felt kind of scared in that early period. We didn't really know what was going on. Do you remember, like, we laugh about it now, but do you remember, like, you'd get groceries and everyone was like wiping down their groceries?
Yeah.
Like, that just seems really silly now.
Felt like you were going into a war zone.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, most of those supplies that I bought, I think I've probably donated most of them. So, like, it's just an interesting consequence of impending doom is it can kind of lead us to do some kind of silly things sometimes.
Yeah.
Don't maybe make a lot of sense. Like, it's good to be prepared, but where does doom lead us?
there was a moment when I was working at camp that I thought, this is it. Like, this is actually it.
Yeah.
And I genuinely thought it was it. Because you always hear, like, particularly at camp for some reason, the devotions are like, you never know. Jesus could come right now.
Yeah.
That's like,
oh my gosh.
That's, the ultimate threat. Is it a threat?
Yeah.
It feels like a threat, but
the threat, AKA the good news.
yes, exactly.
That's how I always feel.
Yeah. And so it was always happening. And so one time I was walking up to, this is at Camp Gilmore. I'm walking up the hill. Campfire was about to start, and I would usually walk up behind the hill and just have some quiet time in the dark. And something entered the Earth's atmosphere at that time.
Oh.
So it looked like a shooting star, right?
Yeah.
And everyone saw it was bright, and then it started to turn green, right? And I was like I was fine until it started turning green. I was like,
yeah, we're done.
And then it got brighter and brighter and brighter and bigger and bigger. And it turned the dark sky to bright. And I was like, this is it. Like, it's happening right now. Everything that they've been warning is right now.
Right.
And then it disappeared and we all tripped out. And then, of course, the expert CE director was like, see,
I told you.
See,
any moment.
That could have been a warning sign.
It's like that SpaceX launch or something.
Yes.
Right, probably.
It was something had entered the Earth's atmosphere and blew up when it came in. But that was a moment where I was like, oh, it's over. It's done. It's done. I lived a good life.
Yeah. Going back to the question there, I don't think I've had like super strong feelings of doom over like everything or like the world's going to end in a moment. But I think what a lot of people feel nowadays maybe too is like there's certain, maybe like a little hopelessness for certain parts of life and certain things,
Yeah.
Some people I feel like more and more, we place a lot of value maybe on a job and we want something really meaningful and really purposeful out of a job. And when we can't like find that or achieve that in some ways, then like we just feel really hopeless and feel a lot of doom, finding some other work. Maybe it's not the most fulfilling thing.
Yeah.
But maybe it lets you do other things, but there's still a doom that maybe another generation wouldn't have over, a job that they didn't maybe care so much about. But the other one that I come back to sometimes is like when I moved down to LA, I couldn't afford anything in terms of like a house up in where I was living before. It's too expensive. I came down here and real estate was like just barely within my grasp, but I still couldn't get anything. And now the whole market has just gone nuts. So there's again, no hope, which is that's kind of like a counter term to this doom and gloom is hope. There's like an inverse, relationship there. So, but now it feels like, again, there's like no hope of finding that sort of thing here,
Yeah.
So I think there's doom nowadays too, but sometimes it can be kind of focused on certain aspects of life for people.
Yeah. Like I had a friend who, he dropped out of grad school because it was like right in the middle of the pandemic. And he was like, it just feels weird to be going to school. And like,
sure.
And it was in film. So he was like studying film and like, I mean, any film career is like 20 years out when you're actually probably going to be doing anything like significant. Yeah. And he was like, feels like nothing's going to be around then. So what's the point of?
Yeah. Or we're not going to know what's going to be around.
Yeah.
And everything's changing. So like,
yep.
And yeah. I mean, and that kind of goes off, or goes along with where I was going to go next with, a lot of the people who are in the same stage of life as me are all feeling that way. Like even, my wife and I, Caroline, when we, got married, we were like, what's the point of saving? Because we might as well blow all of our money now.
Let's go travel. Let's do stuff.
Yeah. Because, I mean, especially like with my parent, I mean, my mom is like, I don't know, she's paranoid. I hope she doesn't listen to this. She's one of those people who's like, Jesus is coming. I know it. Like it's any day
moment.
now. And like, I feel like I should be excited about that, but I'm like, I want to do things before that
Yeah,
happens, you know? So I don't know. If that like added a whole new level of anxiety, I feel like where you're like, am I running out of time? Do I have a year left before, you know, it's all over?
It makes you think for sure.
Yeah.
I do like that at some age in our Christian walk, we're going to get to that point where we just talk about the end times the entire time. Because I notice a lot of senior citizens, that's like a big thing. And they know so much and study so much about it. And like, I'm like, I don't even think about it, right? I'm like, it happens, it happens. But they seem to know. I'm looking forward to that time that I could scare people over and over again.
Do you want me to get you the Left Behind collection?
Yeah.
All the books?
I'm a big fan of Kirk Cameron. But
oh my gosh.
My grandfather marched in the Rose Parade for 60 years. And so they made a big deal about it in his 60th year. And a guy from the LA Times was interviewing him and said, do you think anybody will be able to break your record? Like your son and your grandson are marching and they've been marching a long time. Do you think that they will break your record? And he goes, no, absolutely not. And he's like, why do you think no one will break your record? He goes, Jesus is going to come before that.
Oh, easy.
Like that was his answer immediately. And that poor reporter was like,
okay. What do I do now?
I'm not really sure what to do.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to that.
That's funny.
That's also around the same time where you can just fall asleep whenever you want to.
Yeah, right. Just
So I'm looking forward to that.
So I was reading on this article called parentingforbrain.com, and it says why my child is not motivated to do anything. I thought that was interesting because it talked a lot about kids in school, their grades are sliding, everything else with the pandemic, because obviously everything changed.
Right.
And they're learning at home now. And it was more like talking through those points of it all comes down to your child is stressed, like their parents are losing their jobs around them. Like obviously it's a super stressful time for youth. So what are some ways to deal with the stress our youth are feeling today?
We have to keep them active. Because there's a few things that I learned with my kids' children at home. I was home with them and my wife was teaching. So we were all in the house together, kind of sorting it out. But I realized somewhat quickly is we abandon the way that they learned immediately. So like there was no recess at home. There was no like lunchtime wasn't designated. They had lunch, but they didn't have time after lunch to kind of breathe and stuff. And so we learned early on is to get them that time. They have to get out and exercise and get out and move. There's a reason why schools do that. It's not just for the teacher to, go have a break, but to get them to move, to get them to exercise, to get them, their blood moving. And that was critical for us. And we saw that amongst our friends. And what's interesting, as my kids' athletics have gotten back in, you could see the kids that did not move during the pandemic. I've never, ever in my life seen second half of soccer games where so many kids were walking. Like they're exhausted. They're absolutely exhausted.
Interesting.
And so we abandoned that early on. And there was a group of us that would talk about that. And we noticed a difference when our kids were moving and being able to do stuff. They gave them a break from what they were doing with school. And so some of that stuff of idle hands, getting them moving, getting them active. It doesn't mean that they have to be in a bunch of things and sports. I do think we can overstimulate, but getting outside and doing stuff and see what they're capable of and exploring. Like I opened up my garage tools for my kids a lot, which I would never have done before, but it got them outside. And I don't know, one day I could hear my saw going. I was like, and I went out and my son's out there sawing some logs, some wood. I was like, I need to be here for that. You know what I mean? But I do think, we got to get them active and get them out moving. And I do think from a program standpoint, this is very practical. We forget to do that in youth ministry programming as well. We forget that how they are structured to learn. Kids they're in this model of learning. We should look to frame the way we do stuff, how they're used to doing it as well.
Say maybe one angle on it too is I go back to the parallel of, hope and doom, right? And you got to be real careful. I don't have any kids myself, but like with Youth in the Core, with, kids you're working with in programs and things like that, just the way we talk as maybe mentors and adults and youth leaders, about the world. And as much as we can help them understand, like, you can take a break from news. You'd be surprised probably how many young people, teens, even younger than that, they're listening to the news. They're paying attention to this. They're checking, Twitter or Reddit on their phones. They're looking at all these, I don't know, are those social media things still around?
Go with TikTok and Instagram and you're good to go.
There we go, those two. They're seeing news, which includes a lot of this doom and gloom about the future. And in particular, as a phrase from the pandemic, I think we heard a lot, which is like, we just don't really know what the future is going to look like. We might interpret that as kind of a neutral phrase, but I think in other contexts, maybe for younger people too, that's maybe a far more negative thing. So if we don't know what the future is, there's kind of a loss of hope in that sense, I think.
Yeah.
So you get these kids that kind of just feel like, well, I don't know what the future is going to hold, so why should I try for anything right now? Yeah. But if we can find ways to foster hope, to show that there's things to look forward to, there's still milestones in life, there's still wonderful, beautiful things to experience and these are things that God has ordained for us, and put in life for us to enjoy and to be a part of. So yeah, there's wonderful things to hope for in life, and we can't just talk about all the difficult things that we see on the news. Let's talk about the hopeful things too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of on that note too, I think as youth leaders, one thing that we could do is just really emphasize, like, I feel like there's a lot of scriptures about hope and a lot of scriptures about how kind of this like environment and world that we're living in now, this isn't like our final, like, this isn't the end of the story kind of a thing, even though it sometimes kind of feels like that, it's not. I pulled up a verse from Romans that I personally find a lot of encouragement in. It comes from Romans chapter 5, verse 3-5. It says, "Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance character, and character hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who's been given to us." I just love that, sometimes I feel like we're in that sort of suffering stage sometimes, but that's just one part of this like process, we can't get sort of stuck in that suffering. There's also, I'm just going to give a shout out, but one of my favorite bands, Thrice, Dave is familiar. So they have a song lyric that I love, and it says, "My heart is filled with songs of forever, a city that endures where all is made new." And it's just that idea that, this isn't like the permanent place. We're not stuck in this. God has greater things for us. And this is all kind of part of this like marathon that we're on, even though sometimes it does feel really overwhelming.
Yeah. Can I actually, one more thought from that even, there's like, with this idea of looking forward to something greater that God is doing in our lives and in the future, it just strikes me as odd then as Christians if we do focus on kind of the negative, because that's not the basis of our faith. That's not like the point. So it seems really counterintuitive to like set people up to, I don't know. It's like if we just focus on the gloom, we're setting people up for something that isn't really compatible with our faith. Our faith is not one of doom and gloom, but one of hope.
Yeah. How can we provide hope to others even during this time as well? Yeah.
I'd maybe even take it a step further too. Like when things are going awesome in culture and everything is wonderful, that's great. And I think you can see that as the blessing of the Lord in many ways. But a lot of times through struggle and through pain and through difficulties, we find a greater need for the Lord, and we can actually see him work in our life more. I think I'm trying to remember if I put this in a lesson of some type recently, but I like to always try to make sure that there's something in life that it's like a stretch goal. Is that from, what was that from? Kickstarter. They had stretch goals, right?
They did.
So it's a stretch goal, but like in your life and your faith, like what's something that seems kind of impossible in your life that you would love to see come about or work out or happen, or maybe in a ministry or something? Like pray about that, hope for that, talk to God about that, because that's a way that you can like see him show up and do something awesome. If you're always just kind of, I don't know, it's great to be content, always be content, but if you're never like hoping for something more or greater, it's like, I think it might be a little hard to see how God's working. So in all these difficulties and in maybe the feelings of doom, that's a great time to like see how God can break through that and meet you where you're at.
Right.
That's polar opposite to my strategy in most things. I was like, it's not going to happen. I mean, I'm going to try and I'll give it my effort.
Sure.
It's just not going to happen. And then if it does, I'm like, hey,
you're surprised.
That was great. And if it doesn't, be like, told you so.
So say you have a teen or young adult who tells you that, they're no longer going to try because of everything happening. Or they say, my mom says the rapture's happening any day now, so I'm giving up and there's no point. Like, what would you say to them?
First of all, take a shower.
Right.
Start with that.
Yeah, that's tough. I don't think anyone gets to that point through like a snap decision. They didn't just wake up one morning and say, I think I'm going to give up at this point and just stop trying.
Yeah.
So I think you don't get out of it through a snap decision either. There's probably not one thing you could say to a teen to really like pull them out of that doom and gloom. It's going to be a process, and it's going to be, again, fostering, growing, nurturing hope in them. And I think a great way maybe is just to help them focus on small milestones in their future. Like, don't think about, your job that might come 5, 8 years down the line. What's something going on in 3 months? What's something happening in 6 months? What are these small things that we can hope for and build towards in life? And I think that's a great way to help them kind of find those little placeholders in life and keep hanging on,
Yeah. Yeah, when the pandemic first hit, my mom was like, "This is it.
This is it. We're going
it's
now.
over.
Back it up."
I was like, "What?" But I remember I was pulled out the Bible. I was looking at Revelation. I was like, "Is there any clues that this is happening right now?" Because she was like, it's end times. It's over. And I'm like, great. There's a lot of things I wanted to do, but I guess it's over. So yeah. It definitely, that was something I had to overcome because, you feel like, just graduating college, I had a lot that I was ready to do. And then all of a sudden it's like,
you're like, why did I go to those PE classes?
I know.
Yeah. Those are big fat waste.
Yeah, I can eat whatever I want. I'm like, let myself go.
Yeah. There was something about that actually. Oh, I'm trying to remember which book it's in. One of the Thessalonians, I think. They, it's sort of the same result, but the opposite reason. So we have people giving up because of doom and gloom. And I think it's that Second Thessalonians. Paul's writing to the church there because they had kind of given up on life, but for the opposite reason. They thought Jesus was coming back literally any moment, and they were so happy and excited. They were like, let's just chill and have a party. Let's just hang out. It's going to happen any moment. So they kind of quit their jobs, quit working, quit. It was an ancient context, but still kind of the same idea. And I think we kind of fall into it, but now through the sort of through the tribulation concept. And I don't want to get into the whole thing, but I will be honest, the Left Behind series, that theology and the culture that's kind of come about from it is still very pervasive. I don't know a lot of people nowadays that still read those books, but that's a certain view and bent on Revelation and some parts of Daniel and other parts of Scripture. And I wouldn't say it's that hasn't been a persistent theological perspective. It's not a historical view. It's kind of a nuanced view. And if you go and look at what Revelation says and other passages of Scripture, it's not it reads like a narrative. It's not super clear. We have general ideas God's kingdom wins in the end. God preserves his faithful people. You have a lot of basic principles like this, but man, those books, they get really detailed. This is what the mark of the beast is going to look like. And this is where you can buy and sell and all of these other things. And it's it's not always as clear when you go to Scripture, what's going to happen. So when it comes to thinking about doom and gloom and our perspective on the future, it's not really helpful to just give up because you think your interpretation of Revelation is coming to light in front of you. That wasn't the purpose of the book. It wasn't to say, here, read this so you know when you can just give up and wait for Jesus.
Yeah.
The point of the book was to be faithful until the end. You have hope. That was the point of the book, is that God's kingdom does win. So live your life according to his word and his principles then until he comes.
Yeah. I think another thing that helped me in the beginning of all of it was thinking back, this is not the worst thing that's happened. You know?
Yeah.
World War II was what?
We've gone through worse
80
things,
years
right?
ago.
Yeah.
And so, those type of things, this is not the worst thing. That was way worse. So
that's a great way to put it in perspective too. Because it's there have been other disasters in the world. And again, when those things happen, people also thought it was the end times.
Yeah.
And some of them probably wanted to give up, but things kind of keep going,
Yeah.
I gave up on year 2000.
Right. Y2K.
Y2K. I was just going to say.
How much water did you put in your basement?
Nothing. And we don't have basements here.
Oh, right. Sorry. Midwest.
But nothing.
No, I was cocky. I was like, we're good.
Yeah.
I ain't worried.
Oh my God. I can't imagine what I would be like if Y2K was now. knowing what I stocked up on for the pandemic.
Oh,
You know, I'd have been like, oh my gosh.
I need another freezer.
I'm going to be on. Okay. You had to bring up the freezer. Yes. I did buy a deep freezer in like April or May of last year. Just because I didn't want to go to the grocery stores often.
I mean,
less
that's
contact
fair.
with people, you know.
That's fair.
Stocked up. But I think I'm going to wind it down, get rid of my deep freezer.
wow.
I
Whoa.
don't
Cutting
really
back.
need it, you know.
Aw.
Why?
I think we're doing okay here.
Dave just
I know.
turned the course right now.
I still have my
Something bad's gonna happen.
I still have my dehydrated lasagna that I got from Costco. It's in these little
You bought it on
tubes.
purpose?
yeah.
Costco had like emergency.
Yeah, it's like emergency food.
prepared
The goofy
kits,
part is
yeah.
the bucket thing is like this big and it's like 1 day's worth of food. It's super inefficient for your space.
Yeah.
It like fills up half a shelf and it's like 6 days worth of food. I was like, this is not what I wanted.
Dehydrated lasagna.
I know. I kind of want to
Sounds
try
great.
it just to see if it's good though.
Yeah,
You know?
you
I feel
should.
like I should break open one jar.
Yeah.
You
Test it out.
know if it's good or not.
I got the lasagna and I got the beef stroganoff.
Of course, you got the beef stroganoff,
We'll see.
I
Did
would
they
get
have-
the lasagna.
country fried steak dehydrated.
Oh my gosh. Can you imagine? It'd be so good.
I know all of Dave's likes.
All my favorite foods.
Wait, so in the year 2000, everybody was freaking out? I don't even know about that.
That's
Oh,
I mean,
right,
I
yeah.
was alive, but I was like 5.
Right. Yeah, people were worried. I think
I was watching cartoons.
What was the thing they
I
thought
was.
computers were
watching
all
Bugs
going to
Bunny.
shut down and
Yeah, 'cause
stop working,
they
so
thought
the
that
world was going to stop?
they thought like the dates on computers and all software, like it wouldn't turn over to 2000 well.
They programmed to 99.
Yeah, so they would
Ah.
revert back to 1900 and then all the systems would break and software would error out and none of it happened because people just like, oh, let me change the code. Fixed.
Everybody thought
He
it was
wasn't even
over.
in kindergarten. I just
I
did
know,
the
right?
math. I just did the math.
Yeah, I was probably in preschool. I was
Yeah.
4,
Yep.
I think. No, I was 3.
That's a little while
I
ago.
turned 4 in 2000. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. I think my dad bought like
I think-
a couple gallons of water, but that was like it. He worked in software. He knew it was going to be anything.
Goofballs.
What are some positive takeaways from everything happening today? Like the pandemic, economic instability, political tension. Like, what are some good things that have come out of it?
I think a sense of community.
Yeah.
You know, when you go through things together, then you have that and stuff. And so like, you're spending more time at home. So you see people more often, your neighbors more often. And so you might have a different level of connection with them as well. But because you've all gone through some sort of traumatic experience together, you have that as well. So I'm hoping that we don't have to talk about the weather as much when you first meet people. Like,
Right.
hey, how about that pandemic, huh?
There you go.
And you could start with that rather than, boy, it's unseasonably warm right now. And you try to pretend like you care about the weather for 5
Right.
minutes. But there is that sense of community. There's that sense of we've kind of doing this together. What I loved about anytime that there's adversity, like for anything, you see people, the best in community
Mhm.
coming out of dropping off things at people's doorsteps to make sure that the senior has food that couldn't get out and shop, offering to take care of things for people. And that became natural. And what my hope is all along is usually that happens like in a moment of crisis, right? So like if there's an earthquake or a tornado for you, Jordan, and if something like that happens, you'll see an immediate response, but that goes away, right? All that kind of goes away in just days, and maybe hours sometimes. But with this, we were in it every single day, and that became like a pattern in our life. There became like the familiarity of being able to do that kind of stuff, and so I think that's cool, and I think that maybe long enough that creates a little bit more habit in it for us, that we just don't go right back to being hermits and
Yeah.
maybe not caring for each other as much. And so I like that. I think that's probably for me one of the strongest things that's come out of that is that a broader sense of community and order and the thought process of I want to do something good for someone like right now. Like I think it'd be really cool if we dropped off muffins for them or that kind of stuff. There, you were actively thinking that way, and I think if we thought long enough and did that long enough, that just becomes natural to do. So for me, that's kind of a big standout. Like I wave at people I've never waved at in my life before, and my neighbors, because I know their name and I know, where the kids go to school and that kind of stuff. So it's cool.
Yeah. I think kind of in that same vein. It's like everything we went through in the past couple of years, it reoriented a lot of people's values.
Yeah.
And I think we were forced to because we got to experience life in different ways. A lot of people did work from home. Other people, lost jobs maybe and had to kind of figure other things out. But sometimes through that, maybe better things came about.
Yeah.
And that was good. And like you say, spending more time with families, changed some dynamics, I think for the better.
A lot of self-discovery too.
Yeah.
Like you had time to start thinking about that. I mean, that's why we're seeing differences like in the workplace. We're doing podcasts on that and just the self-discovery of like, hey, no, actually I want this.
Yeah.
This is what I would rather be doing or how I'd rather spend my time.
I think a lot of people, especially with work, have really reevaluated their perspective on what it means to have a good job.
Mm-hmm.
Not just in sense of like, does it pay enough or something like that, but like, what is the relationship of their work and their fulfillment in life? Where do they really want to find that? And is it found in work even? And I think those are all good things. They're difficult things, but they're good. I come back again to kind of what I was saying before too, that through some of the difficulties, I think in the past couple of years, I like to think that hopefully people are, again, maybe moving back towards their faith and towards relying on the Lord for things that they need in life. I think through a lot of those kind of difficult times and needs, we can kind of renew our faith, and that's the right way to say it. Again, it's a way to see how God shows up, which is really, really always a great thing. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, definitely just figuring out what's most important in life and actually reorienting my life to be able to like prioritize those things a little bit more. I definitely think that's been a big thing. And then also just slowing down, like a lot of what you guys have mentioned already, just slowing down the
felt good to slow
pace
down.
of
really
life.
did.
Yeah. I went crazy after a little while. I was kind of like, all right, this is enough. But yeah, just kind of slowing down and again, just reevaluating what really is most important.
Yeah. It was a good reset, I think, for everybody. Yeah. All right. Well, something I saw that I thought was pretty cool that the Salvation Army is doing is they're building, I'm pretty sure they're building it. They're still working on it. But the Rady Residence, which is restoring housing for people experiencing homelessness in San Diego. I know you kind of touched on that for one of your highlights. It was a different.
Yeah, it was one in Los Angeles.
That's right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was interesting. I kind of started looking at the numbers, like the homeless population in the U.S. And I guess San Diego is actually the fourth largest homeless population, which I thought was interesting, behind New York, L.A., and Seattle. So yeah, I thought that was really cool. Ernest Rady donated $50 million to build this housing, and the Army is still working on raising an additional $30 million to bring the project to full fruition. But yeah, I thought that was really cool.
Can you imagine having $50 million just be like, here you go.
Here you go.
That's pretty awesome. I mean, the feeling that you must have to be able to know that you could provide that for people. I mean, and we've had incredible philanthropists provide stuff for the Salvation Army that is just surreal. And that must be pretty nice feeling. I mean, it's kind of like me buying that $5 candy bar for that kid neighbor for school. Just a little bit.
It's exactly the same. Yeah.
It's a little different level, but I think it's so cool that the Army is getting into this. We're seeing a lot of these type of low income and transitional housing available, and it's so critical and important. And I think it's really cool that the Army's involved in that, and in many communities, the leader in that. I think that's cool. It's a cool movement. Yeah.
I know, that's how I feel when I buy like Girl Scout cookies, like $5. Like I just helped someone, even though I'm eating them. All right. Well, anyway, Dave, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again.
Everything we've talked about in this episode is linked in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Saynetwork podcast on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube so you don't miss out on new content. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week with a brand new episode.
See ya.
See you guys.
See ya.